Have you ever worked on a project where the code works, but really nobody understands it anymore? Business rules are everywhere, bugs keep coming back, and adding a new feature feels scary. What if I told you there is a way to build a software in such a manner that your code actually speaks the language of the business? Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you are a developer who is tired of messy business logic, overcomplicated services, and the code which is hard to maintain, you are in the right place. In this video, you will learn what the domain-driven design is in simple, plain English, why it matters for the real-world software, and how it helps you design better software, especially for complex systems. So let's start with the basic question, why domain-driven design even exists. In many applications, we start by thinking about the technology first. We think more about the databases, frameworks, controllers, and the APIs. Those things matter, but actual business rules often get buried or spread all over the code. As the system grows, it becomes very hard to understand and easy to break. Domain-driven design was created to fix this by keeping the business logic clear and at the center of the application. Let's understand the problems developers face when they are not using the domain-driven design. First problem is that the code works, the application runs, but when someone looks at the code, it is hard to understand what is really going on. Business rules are spread across controllers, services, and the database logic. Because of that, even a small change can cause unexpected bugs. When a new developer joins the team, understanding the systems feels overwhelming and takes a lot of time. Now imagine if your code actually speaks the language of the business. Instead of technical terms everywhere, the code reflects real business ideas and real world concepts. The business rules are clear, easy to find, and properly protected. Because of that, making the changes feels much safer and less scary. And most importantly, the developers and the business people start using the same language. This is exactly what the domain-driven design promises. It is designed to solve all the problems we talked about earlier. So let's answer, what is domain-driven design? The domain-driven design is an approach of software design where the business domain is the center of everything. Instead of starting with databases and frameworks, we focus on understanding how the business actually works. The business rules we define in domain becomes the heart of the system, and the code is written to reflect the real-world concepts and the processes. This is why domain-driven design is not a framework or a library you install in your application. It's basically a new developer mindset. So what does domain actually mean? In simple terms, the domain is the problem your software is trying to solve. It includes the business logic, rules, and the concepts behind the application. For example, in a banking system, the domain includes things like accounts, transfers, and payments. In an e-commerce application, the orders, customers, and the refunds are part of your domain. And in a blogging system, it is post, publishing, and moderation. The domain-driven design encourages us to understand these ideas deeply before we even start writing code. One of the most powerful ideas in domain-driven design is something called the ubiquitous language. It means everyone involved, developers, business experts, and the product owners uses the same terms to talk about the system. These terms are not just used in meetings, they are also used directly in the code. This improves clarity and reduces the confusion between different stakeholders. The key idea here is to name the things correctly. If a concept exists in the business, it should also exist in the code with the same name. In domain-driven design, an entity is something that has a unique identity and it exists over time. Even if some of its details change, it's still considered the same thing. For example, the order might change its status and the customer might update their address, but they are still the same order or the customer. In domain-driven design, we use entities to model the things in the business that really matters and have some sort of continuity. Hey, we have an order class. The most important part is the ID. This is what gives the order its unique identity. Even if the total amount changes, it is still the same order because the ID stays the same. The add amount method shows that an entity can change over time. The important thing to understand here is that the entity data changes, but its identity doesn't. In domain-driven design, a value object is different from an entity because it doesn't have a unique identity. Instead, it is defined by its values. Often, value objects are immutable, which means once they are created, they don't change. Examples of value objects are things like money or an address. If you have two money objects with the same amount and the currency, they will be considered equal. We use value objects in domain-driven design to model the concept in our business that don't need their own identity, but they are still important. Domain-driven design encourages us to model these ideas explicitly because they exist in the business. One of the biggest mindset shifts in the domain driven design is that where should the business logic live? Business logic should not live in controllers or some random services. Instead, it should live inside the domain model itself. This way, your domain objects are responsible for protecting the business rules. It keeps the application behavior consistent and makes the system easier to test and maintain as it grows. This is a simple example of business logic inside the domain. Here, the pay method checks if the order is already paid. If it is, it throws an exception and stops the operation. This means now the domain is protecting itself from going into some invalid state. The business rule to check whether the order is paid or not lives inside the domain and not in the UI or the database. This makes your system easier to understand, safer to change, and much easier to test because the rules are enforced in one clear place. One common question is, can we use the domain-driven design in every project? The honest answer is no. Domain-driven design works best when the business rules are complex, the system is expected to grow, or multiple teams are working on it. In these cases, the extra structure you build using the domain-driven design really pays off. If you are building a small CRUD application or some simple admin tool, domain-driven design feel like an overkill. The key here is to use the domain-driven design where it makes sense and keep things simple when it doesn't. The key takeaway from the domain-driven design is that it is really about understanding the business first. The language we use matters, and we should use the same terms in our code that the business uses in real life. We should model the software around real-world concepts instead of technical details. And most importantly, we need to make sure that the business rules are protected inside the domain. When we do this, our systems becomes easier to understand and maintain. If this video helped you understand the domain-driven design, smash the like button and also subscribe to my channel for more domain-driven design tutorials. Keep building the software that actually makes sense. Until next time, stay awesome.